Sorry, few connection issues there. Hi everyone, Jacquie Edwards here, author of the #1 best-selling book, Rent to Rent, Your Questions Answered. So this is the second live at lunchtime session. So welcome, and hopefully we're going to be a little bit steadier today because I've bought a small tripod to put my phone on, so hopefully that helps us out, although it seems like my internet connection might be a bit slow. So hopefully everything is working as it should be on your end. So again, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jacquie Edwards. I specialize in rent-to-rent and property investing, and also in growing businesses. So these live at lunchtime sessions are going to be covering all topics related to those things. So in this one, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people ask me about in their rent-to-rent business, but that covers just generally business practices as well. So we're going to be talking about how to look professional, because I think that's a really, really important thing for people that are just getting started, and I think people get a bit scared of how much this might take and what it will entail. So we'll just start at the very beginning, and I like to keep things as simple as possible as well. So basically, what does looking professional in your business look like? At a very basic level, it is about how you can build trust and credibility with your customers. So if we use my rent-to-rent business as an example, the first customers that I'm going to be working with or needing to get on board are agents and landlords that want to give me houses that I can take over and I can manage. So I need to look professional so that I can build up that trust and that credibility with them. So how do I do that? First, I think it's very important in today's business world to have a good online presence. So that means you need to have a website. Now, this website doesn't need to be anything really complicated or really expensive to set up. When I first started my rent-to-rent business, I basically had a couple of pages on an easy website. So it basically had a front page that said, here is what we do. We guarantee rents for landlords. And I had an About Us page. The About Us page is really important because that's where people go to find out who are you and what, again, it's building that relationship, that trust, and that credibility. So that About page is important, and it's important to keep it professional looking, but also to have a little bit of your personality in there. So for instance, I had some information on our About Us page about how I love to go traveling and how I like to do some trekking and some hiking, and I said, ask us about our recent trips to Nepal and Australia. So I actually had landlords that came and they talked to me about that. So I went on a viewing from a landlord who had called me, and we had a great conversation. And then he asked, oh, and I see you've been to Nepal. He's like, I was there as well. What did you do? What did you see? So we were able to have a conversation about that, and it just brought our relationship forward that little bit better. So having a website, really important. Keep it simple in the beginning. It just needs to have a little bit about your business and an About page with your contact information and a little bit about you. So that's first. I'll add some resources in a link for how you can kind of get your website set up. So I do offer services where I help people set up websites. There are also some really great website, kind of do-it-yourself website options out there. So again, it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time or technical skills. The second thing you want to make sure you have is a professional email address. So once you've bought your domain name for your website, so yourpropertysolutions.com, whatever it's going to be, you want to make sure your email address has that domain name in it. So a lot of people I see get started in any business, and they just use their Gmail or their Hotmail or their Yahoo account for their email address, or they'll set up a new one for their business. So it'll be yourpropertybusiness@gmail.com. It's a great idea, and that's one step further than using your personal Gmail account. But you should really have a professional Gmail account with or a professional email account that doesn't have the Gmail, the Hotmail, the Yahoo name in it. And it's really easy to set this up as well. So we use Google Apps for Business. So all of our email still runs through the Google platform, which I absolutely love. So you still get access to Google's Calendar, Google Documents, and Google's great email server. But you have a professional looking email address. So my email, jackie@jade-ps.co.uk or jackie@propertygotogirl.com or .co.uk, whichever one it is. They both run through Google, so Google's our provider for that. But it looks professional, so it's not just jackie@hotmail.com. That's not one of my email addresses, by the way, so don't try it. But it looks a lot more professional when I've got my business name in there. And again, that's going to help you build relationships and build up trust and credibility with your property owners. So really important. There's not a huge cost. I think Google Apps for Business is maybe, £3 or £5 a month per email address that you've got. So have a look at that. I'll try to pop a link to it as well in the notes to this video later so that you can check that out. So I can see we're getting more people on here, so make sure you go back and listen to the first part. So now we've talked about having your website to build that credibility, having your email address to build that credibility. It's also worth having some just marketing documents. And that'll start with having your logo, which you'll also want to put on your website. And again, you can create a really easy logo either yourself, or if you really don't feel like you have that creativeness in you, using a website like Fiverr or Upwork is where I do a lot of my freelance work, and just having a designer make you a logo for anywhere from either £5 up to kind of £20, and it'll be a professionally designed logo. They'll give you all the formats that you need to use them in all the different areas. Otherwise, I used, for one of the most recent logos I used for another business that I'm working on, I used a website called PicMonkey, so it's PICmonkey.com, and this basically lets you kind of move images and text around and set it up really nicely. So most logos that I see, when you're keeping it really basic at the beginning, it can just be text. So it's about picking out what colors you want to work with, what colors represent your brand, and just a few different fonts. So yeah, so using that, you can really easily make your own logo. So again, that's picmonkey.com to create your logo. Then you're going to want to have those marketing documents. In my rent-to-rent business, when I was first going out to talk to agents and talk to landlords, the first few viewings I did, I found it really difficult to explain what it was that I was doing to these agents and landlords. Again, with practice, it gets a lot easier, but in the beginning, it might be really helpful, and it also makes you look more professional to have some marketing documents that you give them. Again, you don't have to have specially printed brochures or anything really fancy like that. I just had what I called one-pagers. And it had my logo up at the top in kind of like the letterhead format. So I had my logo, my company address, and my company phone number, that website, and that email address that we talked about before. And then I just had a page that had a little bit of information about our company. I had a page that talked about rent to rent. So mostly it was just a couple of FAQs. So some of the questions that people were asking me regularly, I just wrote those questions down and a brief answer to them, so that after I did the viewing or after I talked to the landlord, I had them in a nice white folder. I would just be able to say, here you go. You can have a look at these in your spare time. If you have any other questions, let me know. So that way, there's lots of people that need to, read information or see it more than once before they can make a decision. So it's great if you're there and you're explaining things to them, but what happens when you're not there? Or maybe they have a partner that they need to get on board as well. And when you're working with agents, you might explain something to them, but then you've got to rely on them to explain it to the landlord. So if you've given them something written out, it'll be really helpful. They can read through that. If the landlord asks them any questions, then they can look at that paper that you've given them, kind of the top 5 or 6 questions, and they can put together an answer for the owner. So again, it doesn't have to be anything really complicated. I just printed them off straight from my printer in the beginning. People really loved having them, and it made me look that bit more professional. And while I was just talking about the letterhead, I also mentioned a phone number and an address up there. So when I'm sending letters or marketing material to anybody, you want to have your address and your phone number in them. So when you're using a phone number, it's best probably not to use your mobile phone number, because those tend to look like kind of fly-by-night companies. You can include your mobile number, but I recommend you should have a local landline number as well. those are really easy to come by. There's lots of companies online that you can buy maybe £10. I think we pay £10 a year for our kind of local phone number. And when somebody calls that phone number, it forwards to wherever we want. So I can have it forward directly to my mobile phone, but the person on the other end thinks they've called my office landline number. Or what we do is we forward it to a call answering service. So again, just that next level up of professionalism. So I have somebody that answers my phone for me and takes them through a script. I would say you don't have to do that right away, but definitely have a landline number they can call that at a minimum, it forwards it to your mobile phone. The company we use is called TTNC. So if you Google them, it should pop up and you can cycle through and see what they offer. And again, I suggest you have a local phone number as opposed to, one of the free phone, an 800 or 845 number, just because you want to establish yourself, at least in your rent-to-rent business, as a local business working with landlords in that area. If you are working in a number of areas, you might want a local phone number in each one of those areas, just so they know you're local. Then the next step is having an address, and you want to make sure, in the beginning I used my home address. I wasn't very comfortable with that, but you can do it. I would say make sure your home is close to the area that you're working in. I live about 20 minutes outside of Oxford, so I had landlords saying, you live really far away, how are you going to be able to manage my property? Or not live, but your business is quite far away, how are you going to be able to manage my property from there? So even though it was only 20 minutes, that would look like where my business office was, so they were a bit confused. What I've got now is I rent basically kind of a serviced office type thing. I use Regis, and I don't actually have a set office. I just have a place that my mail and my post can go to. So I can use their address, which they have offices everywhere, and there's lots of companies that do this. I can put their address on all of my mailing and all of my marketing documents. And they'll either forward it on to me or I can pop there and pick it up. So I've got a local Oxford address now, and they also rent office space. So if anybody does want to meet me at my office, I can rent the office space by the hour. They had a beautiful boardroom. They've got beautiful offices that I can rent and meet clients at to talk to them there. So hopefully that helps. Those are a few things that you can use to get started with. You don't need to start with all of them. So I would say at a minimum, you want that professional email address and that website set up. And then work on it from there into getting your kind of basic marketing material set up, so something that you can give your customers and your clients to take home with them after, and all the way through to, having that professional phone number, even a call answering service, or a mailing address as well, once you get a little bit further along in your business. Those also work on the other side of my business when I'm working with tenants. So they have a phone number, they have an office that they can send mail to and feel like they can interact with. None of my tenants have ever been to my office, but they can go there, and the secretary will just tell them she's not in right now, it's appointments only, and they can come back another time. So it just really helps, again, make my company look bigger and more professional. So thank you very much for joining me for the Live at Lunchtime. That's all I've got for today, but tune in again tomorrow as I'll be out on site at a couple of my properties, as I'm having a full day's mentoring with a mentoring client tomorrow. So I'll be out and about, and we can have a little look at some of my properties and go into detail there. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.